It is 6:44 a.m. on December 4th, 2024. New York City is waking up under a shroud of cold winter mist. In the heart of Midtown Manhattan, the holiday lights of 6th Avenue are blurred by a light drizzle. Outside the New York Hilton Midtown, the sidewalk is quiet, save for the hum of distant traffic. A man in a dark coat walks briskly toward the hotel entrance. This is Brian Thompson. He is one of the most powerful executives in America, the CEO of United Healthcare. He has no security detail. He thinks he is just another businessman attending an investor conference. But behind him, a shadow is moving. A figure in a grey hooded sweatshirt, face obscured by a mask, steps out from behind a pillar. He doesn't shout. He doesn't hesitate. He raises a suppressed firearm and begins to fire. The weapon jams. The assassin doesn't panic. With cold, mechanical precision, he clears the jam and continues. Within seconds, the most powerful man in American healthcare is lying on the pavement. The shadow vanishes onto a bicycle, disappearing into the labyrinth of Central Park. This was not a random act of violence. It was a message, and the hunt for the man behind the mask would lead the FBI from the penthouses of New York to a quiet McDonald's in Pennsylvania unearthing a manifesto that would spark a national debate on life, death, and the price of a human soul. To understand the end of Brian Thompson's story, we must go back to the beginning. Brian was born in 1970 in Savage, Minnesota. His parents, Richard and Mary Thompson, raised him in a classic Midwestern environment, one defined by the Minnesota nice ethos and a rigorous work ethic. Friends from his youth described him as a quiet overachiever. He wasn't the loudest in the room, but he was often the smartest. After graduating from high school, he headed to the University of Iowa. It was here that Brian found his calling in the world of numbers. He didn't just study business. He mastered the art of the bottom line. In 1997, he earned his degree in business administration. Shortly after, he met Paulette. They would go on to marry and build a life in Maple Grove, Minnesota, raising 2 sons. To his neighbors, Brian was the guy who mowed his own lawn and cheered at his kids' soccer games. But in the corporate world, he was a rising star. In 2004, Brian joined United Healthcare. At the time, the company was already a titan, but Thompson helped propel it to a level of dominance rarely seen in American history. He climbed the ladder with surgical precision. He served as the CFO of the employer and individual business, then the CEO of the Medicare and Retirement Division. By April 2021, he was named CEO of the entire United Healthcare wing. Under his watch, United Healthcare became a $280 billion behemoth. He was responsible for the healthcare of nearly 50 million Americans. His salary reflected his success, totaling over $10 million a year. But with that power came a growing target. In the eyes of the market, he was a hero. In the eyes of millions of frustrated patients dealing with claim denials and rising costs, he became the face of a system they felt was broken. While Thompson was climbing the corporate heights, another man was descending into a personal hell. Luigi Mangione. Born into a wealthy, prominent family in Maryland, Mangione was the definition of a golden boy. He was the valedictorian of his high school, and an Ivy League graduate from the University of Pennsylvania, where he earned both a bachelor's and a master's degree in computer science. But something changed. Around 2020, Mongioni began suffering from chronic, debilitating back pain. He underwent surgery, but instead of relief, he found more agony. He began to post on social media about his frustrations with the medical system. He felt the industrial medical complex was more interested in profit than healing. He disappeared from his family's view. He moved into hostels. He began using fake IDs. He was no longer the Ivy League scholar. He was becoming a ghost with a grievance. Back at the crime scene in Manhattan, investigators found something chilling. The shell casings left behind weren't ordinary. They had words engraved on them: deny, defend, and depose. These are the 3 Ds of the insurance industry, a cynical shorthand for how companies supposedly handle claims to avoid paying out. This transformed the investigation from a simple murder into a political assassination. The NYPD used their real-time crime center, tracking the suspect via thousands of cameras. They saw him enter a hostel. They saw him at a Starbucks. They found his DNA on a discarded water bottle and a protein bar wrapper. But the suspect was smart. He used a ghost gun, a weapon with no serial number, and he stayed off the grid. The breakthrough didn't come from a high-tech satellite. It came from a McDonald's employee in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Days after the shooting, a young man sat in the corner of the restaurant, acting strangely, keeping his mask on even while not eating. The employee called the police. When officers approached him, the man produced a fake ID, but his hands were shaking. When they searched his bag, the mystery ended. They found a modern-day revolutionary's toolkit, a suppressed handgun, $10,000 in cash, and a handwritten manifesto. The manifesto read, "I do apologize for any strife I have caused, but this entity has had it coming." It was a scathing indictment of the American health care system. Luigi Mongioni was no longer a ghost. He was the most famous prisoner in the country. As of February 2026, the United States remains divided over this case. To some, Brian Thompson was a devoted father and a brilliant executive whose life was stolen by a radicalized loner. To others, the case served as a violent flashpoint for the national anger over health care. The legal battle is historic. Luigi Mongioni sits in a New York jail cell, facing a trial set for June 8, 2026. His defense team argues that his mental and physical suffering should be considered. The prosecution points to a man who traveled across state lines to execute a father of 2. In cold blood, Brian Thompson's chair at United Healthcare is filled by someone else now. The hotel entrance has been scrubbed clean. But the conversation started that December morning continues to echo in every doctor's office and boardroom in America. Some mysteries are about who did it. This mystery was about why. And as the trial nears, the world waits to see if justice will be found in a courtroom or if the system Brian Thompson built is too big to ever truly face a verdict.